Good morning, everybody. I'm going to gavel us in and then ask Commissioner Modis to please assist me as I am on a TDM phone call that is quite urgent. And so, good morning. This is a budget workshop, and I gavel us in. The time is 9:06 a.m. There are two commissioners present in the courtroom, Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Hernandez. I am in an adjacent office. Commissioner Modis is participating by virtual technology. And just want to make sure, Commissioner, you can hear us. All right, and Commissioner Chesney, can you hear us? You are also participating by virtual means.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Great. All are accounted and present for clerk, and we, again, at the third floor, Nueces County Courthouse, in Commissioner's Courtroom for this budget workshop this morning. And with that, I wish I could stay with you for the prayer. God knows that we need a lot of prayers right now, but I will pray with you from another room. Commissioner Modis, would you begin the process? And I hope to join you all very, very quickly inside the courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. All right. If y'all join me in a prayer this morning to start off our process and our week. And dear God, we thank you for today and the opportunity to work on this budget. We put this in your hands to guide us to find a fair way to handle the taxes that are entrusted on us. But most importantly, we pray for the health and welfare of our county as we continue to see a surge in COVID and in cases and unfortunately those who have passed. We pray for those families, we pray for those first responders and for our leadership that you'll guide them to help us through this process once again. And dear God, we pray that beyond things, we put our responsibilities first for the county and to the best job we can to help serve the people. In your holy name we pray, amen.
Amen.
All right. Okay. Let me see. Sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. I think.
Commissioner, we have the call to order. I think the judge did that. We do have public comment next. And I don't see anybody online.
None? Okay.
And I don't see anybody outside. So I would say there's no public comment. And so the next item is budget workshop.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Tyner, and Dale, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and you should have received your little black book that we have every year for this. Hopefully we can give it to you on Friday. There was some small modifications, so my staff will be coming over very soon to replace a few pages of the book. This was a compiling of all the stuff we've gone through when we did the Department of Presentations, as well as other items of discussion I've had with the judge, and as well as a few other of your commissioners, to try to find out how to best start this beginning. This is the start of the budget process for where we believe we're going to be and where we need to try to accomplish. These numbers can change until we get to the final decision on a proposed budget as in the end of August and September, before we do our evaluations. And there are a few items that are missing from this book, and that's the main reason is why is because when the legislature last changed, they changed a lot of the tax codes, and the comptroller has not updated the software to be able to calculate the tax rate. So right now, we do not have any tax rate calculations in here, so I cannot tell you where our tax rates are or where we expect to be. We're working on that, as well as the appraisal district's having some little complications with some of the numbers because of the comptroller's changes. So we don't have the true certified values yet. My staff is working on that constantly today and tomorrow. We hopefully have something for you on Wednesday, because we do have a agenda item to present those rates. However, they may need to be tabled until the 11th, and we have to take action on the 11th if that's the case, because of the way our budget calendar is. The first item is, you'll see in tab A is just your organizing of how we understand the county's budget and how we've done it in the past. tab B is where we start, where we talk about our proposed budget, and there's some few items in here that are important that if you have not read, please read the items. We talk about the economic outlook on B3, showing where we are and where the state is and where the United States government is based on unemployment rates and other population rates, as well as some of our other economic rates that we have. And as we know with the coronavirus, is that we are in a downward kind of bend. Hopefully this will start coming up again once we start getting everything running again. But as we know, we're still in this process of the coronavirus, and hopefully we find a way to end this at some point in time. Now, there was a few mid appointment values that we have, and you go to the tabs on where we start on B5, where we have approved mid-budget year positions and reclassifications that the court has already taken action for. And these items will be needed to do a budget amendment to it or adding to the budget this year because they were not already there. As well as you see there was several of them starting on page B5 and B6. B7, we have a continuous pay, which is a normal process through our personnel policy where anyone that has 3 years of continuing service does get a slight increase in salary. And this year, there's 148 employees that will qualify for that. I believe there's 5 elected officials, there's 3 or 4 department heads, and the rest are your regular employees. And that total of value will be brought to you at the moment where it's $160,890, where we'll do that. This year, we saw an increase in our retirement plan on item number 3. It went from 13.82 to 14.32. And that will cause an increase in our premium that we have to pay each year for our retirement, and that is around $400,000 of increase for that particular function. As you know, we have a agreement with our Sheriff's Office Association as well our constables on number 4 on B8. This year, there was a 4% increase of salary for each of it was agreed upon in our agreement, where that now costs us $383,621. When we get to the process, we are proposing some new positions and some reclassifications. Now, tentatively, these numbers are $419,376, and you'll see that on table 3. And reclassifications of around $515,000, and you'll see that on table number 4. Now, again, these can change right now. This is what we assumed from what our discussion was when we had the departments in here and working with the judge and myself. We've kind of narrowed it down to what we believe would be justifiable new positions and reclassifications, but these definitely can change. One item that cannot change is number 7. There was a law passed 2 years ago where the district judges all received a salary increase based on their years of service on the bench. And because there's a law that says that a county court law judge must be received $1,000 less than the district judge, they also follow the same pattern. In this particular year, Judge Galvan of County Court Law number 3 qualified for an increase from moving from 8 to 12 years of service. So that is $14,000, and that is a required increase. On page B9, you'll see some items that are definitely questionable, and these are some challenges items that we need to work on, and that's Metrocom. As y'all had this on an agenda item several weeks ago, where it was brought to us from the city of Corpus Christi, where they're going to add a possibility of an increase of $1.1 million for their CAD, and as well as $800,000 increase for salary. The fiscal impact for the county would be $546. Now we're working on trying to fund that through the ARP funds, but we still may need to have part of this, because part of this does have salary in it. And I don't believe that the ARP funds can cover the salary portion of it, but we're still trying to get that as much as we can. Pardon me, out of the ARP funds and other services. We got a request from several members of the court, as well as our commission, our adult probation, about adding additional employee under our jail risk assessment, because our jail has been in anywhere from 95 to 100% over the last 2 or 3 months. The cost of adding additional person to this would be around $55,000 if I'm correct, and that's where it'll be. So The rest of the items are very minor in consist, so I'll go through when we get to the actual tables. You'll see that the table's starting on B 16, or B 15, B 16. These are the ones that we've already had some reclassifications in and how the effect was. And the biggest one is on page B 17, where we add a pathologist assistant in the medical examiner's office of a $98,000 increase, as well as an autopsy technician of 31, so an increase of $158,000 just for those two positions. And as you'll see, when I brought up the reclassifications for this, it'd be $333,000 total for those items. The rest of the table just show you right now what we're proposing on new positions and reclassifications, as well as the county court law. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them now. If not, I can continue on tab C. Do we have any questions?
Okay, on 17, B17, you're saying that those are the ones that, they're just coming from the medical examiner and the sheriff's office, those reclassifications, or what?
No, these are what the court has already approved during the budget season, during the commissioner's court in the past few months. These have already been approved, so now I have to put these in as a budget item. These were not a reclassification or well, these were new positions, but the new positions within the budget process that the court has already approved, so that these positions already exist, and we already have people in these positions, so we now have to budget for these.
They didn't have any money there? I mean, I thought those were the ones that, when they come to us, sometimes they have money there?
This year, they may have salary savings on some other issues because of this, but now for next year, I need to add this to the budget.
For next year, not for
next year.
21, but for
This is for next year.
21, 22.
Yes. So for medical's office, I'm required to add $158,000 to their budget. Because these positions did not already exist in the 2021, I now have to put them in 21, 22.
Right, but I thought it was already, the monies were there.
The money's there in 2021, not 21, 22.
Okay. So that money wasn't there, I'm just trying to figure the money was there like for another position, but that position wasn't used, so they created this position, so that money stays there all the time, right?
Well, the money we just repositioned some of the money because when the deputy medical examiner position was vacant for a significant period of time, and we're able to use those monies to basically cover this position. But however, they still need a deputy medical examiner as well as this pathology assistant, so we have to add this to next year's budget.
Okay, and the money that the revenues that come in, they'll come in for the, I mean, what are they can use those to pay for those positions?
We already are.
Huh?
We already are.
So we still need more than that?
Oh, yes.
So we're not making enough revenues there?
No.
Can we just can we get just a kind of a, I'd like to have how much revenues per year we making at the medical examiner's office?
I'm working on that. Commissioner Hernandez said that I've got my staff working on that scenario right now.
Okay.
And everyone will get a copy of it when we get it
Okay,
completed.
thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, Dale, this is John. I had some similar questions to Commissioner Gonzalez, and I'm glad he asked that because that was the same point that I was going to ask as far as why this was pulled out. But you're saying, just to clarify, because I'm on the Zoom, is these positions are not being included at this point for the 2021, 22? Is that what you said?
They are being included because during the 2021 budget year, these positions were not already existing in the budget. When it came to court, these two positions were added to the medical examiner staff, so therefore we must now budget for them in 2021 or remove these positions.
And the same thing with a public information officer?
The public information officer which already created for, it did not already exist. I created a new department for it, so right now that 514, even though it shouldn't really not be here because we didn't create it till next budget cycle, so theoretically there's no effect on this particular budget year. This is all for what we have to increase for next year.
But, so, So why is it showing then if it's not even being included until this next budget? Why would it be labeled in with other positions that we've already taken on?
That's a good point.
It was approved by the Commissioners Court. We just wanted to make sure that it was there for the Commissioners Court, and it required addition. Because it wasn't added as a new position on the new position list. So we can definitely do it there and remove it from here. However, what we need to do is, if the Commissioners Court did agree on the Public Information Officer request, then it will be an increase in 21-22 budget and no effect on 21-22. I mean, 2021.
Yeah, that's fine. I want to make sure, because I mean, if you're looking at it, it makes it seem like we added it mid-year and we've all, like you said, we indicated that we wanted it for the new fiscal year and not this one. So by it just showing up, it just causes some concern, at least when I'm looking at it, that it shouldn't be included with anything that we did have to add mid-year for this current budget.
Yes, I'll make sure that's removed because I do have it on the new position request list. So I'll make sure this gets taken out, and I'll get you a revised schedule.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Dale.
Yes,
On the first two items that we spoke about in the ME's office,
yes,
you did say we could remove those positions,
yes.
okay?
But you'd have to fire the the people in there. Because there are two people already in the positions.
Already in there?
Yes.
How long have they been in there?
Month, maybe 2 months.
Oh. Is there a way we can table this?
Well, there's no action to take, so these two positions were approved by Commissioners Court several courts ago. The ME's already filled the positions, so technically the positions already exist and already filled. So the only way to not include them in the budget would be to terminate them and tell the medical examiner he needs to delete the positions.
Did those positions come within? From those positions, did they come within the department?
Within his department, yes.
So it probably go back to where they were?
No, they're still, I don't know where you got the employees from. Pathology's assistant is a very highly degreed person, so I don't know where that position technically came from. But these were positions approved by court. I'm not sure what date this was on the court action. I believe it was, if we go back into the items, let me see real quick.
The autopsy tech was approved in January, Dale.
So January was approved by Commissioners Court in January, so we're now in August, so it's been probably filled for at least 4 or 5 months.
And the pathologist was approved in May.
But don't we always say or tell them, okay, you got the money to fill it, but if we don't have the money, next year, we don't put it in the budget, then it goes away, right? I mean, but that's the understanding that I understand, that we tell the people and the department heads, we're gonna fill it, but you might not get it back next year. Because if we don't approve it, then you don't get it. I mean, and that's what I think that's what we say all the time when we, to me, I think if we don't have the money to carry it over 2 years at least, maybe we need to think hard about doing something midterm of the year. Because, I think we always say, you can do it now, but you might not get it next year. I remember saying that several times to a lot of department heads, say, you might get it now, but you might not get it next year, and they know that. I mean, they understand that, Now, this one here hasn't even been 6 months, almost 6 months only, and now we already looking at it for almost a new position. But and same thing with the PIO. I think that I think that money can be better utilized a lot better somewhere else. Other positions that we need, that we promised some people that we're going to look at very hard. But it was passed. I mean, I didn't. That's one I didn't vote for, but I still think we need to look at it a little harder on the PIO, and maybe they still want us a new position. I don't know, but recommendations. I think depends on the recommendations we make, or in my position, I'm not making a lot of recommendations, but I am asking for some increases. But I don't know. I just think that every time, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, it's a short period to be now discussing about a new position when we just said, if you don't have it, you might not get it. But we'll take a chance on it, right? Hope that we have it. So if you're saying that we're okay, that we have the money, and it would, no problem, and, I mean, then I'm saying that's what you're saying to us, that we got the money to pay it, we got the money to do it, without without having to go back later on and say, we gotta find the money somewhere. That's my deal, I don't wanna come back and say, well, now you're gonna tell us, we gotta find the money somewhere, or where do we get it from, I always thought that the people were there already in some other positions. I know that the pathologist probably not, it's something that probably came from the outside. But I don't know, this is what I'm thinking, and, this, all these contracts that we have with different counties, and that we gotta, somehow, those monies gotta be paying for something. If we're making 60% and he's making 40%, man, the money's gotta be coming out, they gotta pay for something. I mean, we can't be giving money, we're making money, I mean, so, I don't know, that's my question. I mean, I need to look at that real close, like I said before, we start crunching the numbers here. So, thank you, Dale.
Excuse me, my also concern is, I think Commissioner Gonzalez was of the mindset that there was money in there already from another position. You said y'all pulled it out?
When this was brought forward, there was savings already that did not require an increase in budget for this position last year, because the deputy medical examiner position was vacant and was vacant for several months. I think they just recently filled the position, if I'm correct. So there's still funds this year to pay for the entire staff that they have. However, since now that all the positions are filled, if these positions are to be continued, this $129,000 or $150,000, including your benefits, would now be a required increase in the budget for next fiscal year, if we maintain these positions.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think I wanna take another look at it.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much for me, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, if we go to tab C is our budget calendar,
C, you said C?
tab C. Right now, we're in the August 4th meeting, which is our, August 2nd and 3rd, which is our first two budget workshops for this. We're going to go this pretty thoroughly today and tomorrow. If there's not a lot of questions, we may not need August the 9th and 10th, but we'll see. I believe, Tyner, you already have this scheduled if needed, but I believe if we can get some stuff through today and tomorrow, we may be able to suspend the 9th and 10th, but we'll have to see how that goes. As I've said, my staff's working on the tax rates, so the August 4th submission of the no new revenue tax and the voter approved tax may have to be tabled on the agenda. Hopefully we have the information available, because if not, we're required to do it by August 11th, because if we don't, we'll miss all the notifications on tab C2. That's our required notices for our public hearings, as well as our adoption of our tax rate. So if we do the 11th, we may be forced to accept the rates and propose a rate the same day, which we can. Hopefully we don't have to, but that's a situation that we may have to fall into. Without any questions on there, we're going to go into tab D. Tab D, the item that I want you to look into is the very center of the report. You'll see estimated actuals. My staff and I have gone through all the revenue calculations and revenues that we've received so far this year for the general fund, and made our best estimate of what we expect it to be for the fiscal year end. And we compare it to the budget that you'll see right next to it, and you'll see an over and under budget, which shows you which ones are below our calculations. Our estimations for $1,494,341, and that is a decrease of $2.3 million from the budget. And we expected that with our collections of our tax rates showing about a 95, 96% collection, and that's about where our tax office is saying where it is. So that is down. The next one is.
You're talking about the 2374?
2.374, yes. And the biggest decrease is in our current collections of 1.9 million, and that's around 96, 97% of what our budget is and what our estimations were, and that's what the tax office is saying. The other services, other taxes is basically your bingo tax, your occupation, and your VIT tax. That pretty much was about on budget item. It's only about $9,000 short, but it pluses and minuses. We may see more this year because we've seen a lot more bingo halls opening up. They were required to pay us a bingo tax every quarter, and that should be going up. Our fees of office, we have some that were significantly down. That's because most of our fees of office, those are clerk fees and our sheriff fees and our constable fees. And as we know, with the COVID transaction going on, a lot of those were reduced. So as you can see, our collections for our county clerk was down 55,000. Our district clerk was down 187. Now, the only one that was positive with our county clerk records, which is a lot of people were now filing records, was 253,000 above. But as you go through our JPs, you'll see a total of 180 negative. And the next page, you'll see on the constables and the sheriff, a total of a negative $155,000 reduction. Now, the good thing is our fines, even though they've been going down, haven't actually still saw a clear trying to do the collections for this. Some of them are down, but not as significantly as what our fees of office were down compared to budget-wise, but there was. Our license and permits and our motor vehicle services is where we collect our sales tax from the sales of motor vehicles. It was down because some of our motor vehicles locations were closed for a while, so it went down slightly, but it's still not a significant decrease. The one that, then we go to your intergovernmental revenue, which is your D3. D3, and you'll see our intergovernmental revenue is pretty close to being on site until you get to the very bottom where you have your indigent defense, because our court-appointed attorney's fees were down, so that collection was down. Our state jury was down significantly because we didn't have any jury expense to recover for that. The rest are pretty close to being this, and we did lose some of our other grants, other stuff that we talk about as other intergovernmental revenue. So that was slightly down because most of our grants now are going to 0104, which is our COVID-related information. So a lot of our grants are now going there and not here. So that's why you see that decrease. The information for our housing of inmates and juveniles are pretty standard, and we actually increased from what our juveniles had said, and we believe that that's going to continue to increase, and we'd like to see that happening.
Hey,
Yes.
On the total salary reimbursement,
Yes.
are you saying that probably 2021, 21, 22, they're going to be about the same?
Yes, because most of our salaries come from the state. The state reimburses us for county court law of $84,000 per piece. The district attorney and the county attorney haven't had a lot of exchanges in their staff. So this is where the reimbursements comes from their state longevity that we pay the county attorney and district attorney, as well as some other reimbursements that we have. For the county attorney, we have one attorney that's on staff that the hospital district does reimburse our 100% salary for. So all those basically are pretty much standard, and if anything, we could possibly increase the budget for the county attorney because some of those costs are constant and not changing. But everything else stays exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. Housing and juveniles.
Now on D4 is where the biggest monster hit us, and that's our interest. Our interest rates went from, starting last year, we were receiving anywhere from 2.5% to 3.5% interest. Now we're receiving 0.1% interest. So we went from, if you look from 18-19, we were about 1.1 million. 19-20, which is the very beginning of COVID, we fell $500,000 or $600,000 to 547. Now we fell down another $500,000 to only $22,000 estimated this year, and I'm projecting to lower that budget significantly, even though we hope that turns around, and we definitely hope that turns around because we do have a lot of money that's invested, and right now we're not making almost anything for that. And that's where that is. So rental commission is mostly that rental commission is from our jail phone services that we have for the inmates when they call out, and we receive around $800,000 a year for that based on the last agreement I believe was approved by court. So that's why that number is 1.2 million. Our refunds are just that, as we get refunded for certain items that we had, that miscellaneous other refunds. We're estimating 21,000. The years before that was because we did reimburse the general fund for expenses that it had from CO funds. That's why those numbers were large, and now this year we're only estimating 21. The rest of the other income is your sales, you have printed materials, copy machines, and miscellaneous revenue. A total revenue of 64,000 on a budget of 131, so it is slightly down, but miscellaneous is just that. It happens in miscellaneous times, and that should not be surprising. Our total revenue for the year is 97,580,240 on a budget of 101,870, or right at 97%. I believe that's is how we collected the 97% of revenue.
Okay, well, I lost you there. Where you at?
At the very bottom where it says total revenue, our budget is 101,870,000. We only collected 97,580, and that's about a 97% collection percentage.
Just in total revenue and transfers?
Well, once you get down, total revenue, because your transfers are pretty much right at where it should be, so that our total revenue collections is right at 97% of what we budgeted for it. Do we have any questions on revenue? If not, we'll continue on with the appropriations. Okay, we start on tab E. Again, it's almost the center column. You'll see your estimated actuals, and right next to it, you'll see your original budget and any overage and shortages right next to it. And as we see, most of them aren't. Pardon me. There's only a few that are below budget. Pardon me. Now, these are a total in summary, so that they have the detail later on in tab Q if you wanted to go through each of your departments and find out how we're estimating the other costs. These are just summaries of the costs. So if we go down to the very bottom of E1, you'll see your total general government, which includes most of our departments here, which is the commissioners, the judge, myself, the court administration, risk management, county attorney, county clerk, district tax office, as well as human resources and purchasing. So we estimated 17,994,523 on a budget of 23,700,000, or we are under budget of $5,705,000, which is very, very good. On E2, it shows you your billings. On the billings, we have an estimated actual of $8,292,079 on a budget of $9,392,000, or a overage or under budget of $1,100,000, which is again below average, below budget. On E3, the very top is your capital outlay. Now, I know that one for the capital outlay, I'm need to revise that a little bit, because I know we've got a little more estimated actual on that. So, but it's still not a large sum, but that will probably need to be changed slightly, because I know some good expenses are coming out of there, but it's still going to be under budget. Your admin of justice goes up to page E4. Your total administration of justice is estimating at $21,497,240 on a budget of $25,153,016, or under budget of $3,655,000. That's where I'm saying that we didn't have any jury expense, or we didn't have any large court-appointed attorney fees because of the courts weren't running or the juries weren't running. So that's why that's a significant reduction of under budget for those particular items.
But it's not a lot, we don't have a negative there, it's really,
No,
right?
I didn't see any negative on the, well, there was one on County Court Law 5, which is normally the case because of the processing that he has to do. So there's only one small little error, one small over budget, but with the case flow he works with, that's definitely understandable. Okay. On our law enforcement, which is again on page E4, that's our district attorney, our sheriff, our constables, and our jail. We estimated $34,409,792, even though our jails have been full and our sheriffs and constables have been working very hard for extended period of time. We're still under budget by $1,655,000, which is very impressive, knowing that these particular items are our largest drain out of our funds. Social services on E5. That's your social services, your direct services, your child protective service, Hilltop Community Center, as well as your senior community service and your social services. We're estimating $2.8 million on a budget of $3.2 million, so they're under budget of $324,000. Your health and safety and sanitation, which is your emergency services, your emergency management, your fire marshal. We're going to be changing the 911 program at some point in time. We'll get a direction from the court how we want to rename that, but there's always confusion that this is a 911 platform like they do at the city, and it's not. All it is the mapping, so we'll definitely work on changing that department name very soon. And then we have environmental enforcement and animal care facility as well here. The only one that was over budget was your emergency management. They did a lot of overtime at $28,000, but the total balance of estimating actual of $987,994 on a budget of $1,079,342, and they're under budget of $91,000. Our agricultural and education services is your ag extension, your family community services, and your county library. We're estimating $919,097 on a budget of $1,028,000. They're under budget by $109,000. Now, before we go to transfers, at the very bottom, you'll see that we estimated spending $87,182,318 on a budget of $100 million. So we're under budget by $13 million. If we go to the last page is E6.
Well, you got a negative here at $3,726,000, right?
Where?
The total general fund allocations. But it says on,
Well, that's on E6. I'm getting there now.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
If you go through the balances for our transfers are estimating of $9.5 million. $9.5 million is what our budget was, so we're right at close to being exactly where we are. These vary year to year based on a few transactions, but this didn't change very much. So our total appropriations is $96,734,300 on a budget of $109,873,000. $13 million. Now that negative $3 million is the increase and decrease in your fund balance. So our fund balance, we were estimating our fund balance to be 124, and is actually 127. So it actually was $3 million less than what we estimated the budget to be. But we're still increasing the budget by 1.8 million. No, 2.2 million, excuse me. So we're going from $25,001,104 to $27,459,463, an increase of $2.2 million in reserves for this fiscal year, if our estimates hold true. Now, there is a thing we need to consider on this balances is, as we know, our health insurance is starting to show a negative return on our balances, and we're starting to see a negative fund balance. That negative fund balance needs to be resolved, and working with myself and Tomas and the judge and Commissioner Mata, as we assume that at the end of the year it'll be anywhere from $1.5 million to $2 million in the negative. So some of this reserves will have to be transferred over to the health insurance to make it zero, if not positive. Now, we are trying to still work on some of the ARP funds to see if we can get some recovery from that, because we do have some lost revenue that we're calculating that qualify under the ARP funds. However, we need to make sure those funds can be used for that particular function, and we're constantly researching that particular function. But the $2 million increase we see may have to be used to recover any lost funds that we have at the year. With that, do you have any questions on our appropriations at this time?
So they'll bring it back to 25 million.
It could be if we can't find other sources to use to get our health insurance back to where it needs to be, it'll be back at 25, yes. Now, tab F is just basically our summary of what our departments had requested, and what adjustments we had to that to show where our budget is going to possibly be. And this particular item is the fund, is the general fund up to F6. F6 is your other funds showing you what they requested, what their new positions are. So this is what they're just a request. So this doesn't mean this is what we're proposing, what the budget's gonna be. This is just what they had to begin with and what their requests were to come up with a total budget for the particular year. These are in more detail when we start tab Q, R, S, T, U, V, and W.
Q. Get 6, you were looking at 6 a while ago, right? Okay, we're through with 6?
Tab H shows you what the department's requested for salary of new positions. Now, these are requests only. Later on, we'll come into what we are proposing as recommended, but those recommendations can be adjusted, but these are what the department's requested for new positions on G1 and G2. You've already been provided this list, so I won't go over this in depth for that. As well as your tab H. Your tab H is all your reclassifications that the departments had requested. Again, these are requests, not recommendations. These were what the departments had put in as requests for all the departments for the general fund, as well as other special revenue funds, as well as your other operating funds. For example, your road funds, your engineering funds, your law library, and then coastal parks.
So Dale, are we gonna move then through each tab, or are we gonna jump straight to Q, R, and S, as you mentioned?
Well, we go through the more general tabs that kind of give you a summary of that. Tab Q through W are your more detailed items that goes per department. That'll take a lot of time if we want to go through those individually. But if we need to, we can go through each department that y'all have questions about. We can definitely research those. I just wanted to bring you where we are on what was requested, and now I'm going to get to once we get into K, L, and M is where we actually start doing our recommendations for our proposal of possible new positions and possible reclassifications, and then we're going to start getting into what we call our challenges items that we're going to talk about, and then we can definitely get into more detail.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anytime we can go through these tabs, it may prompt, a question from me or someone else, unless the rest of the court wants to just kind of move past any of the tabs that we may not have to spend much time on. And Commissioners Gonzalez or Hernandez or Chesney, what do y'all think? Do you want to just go to the meat of it, or would y'all rather spend some detail on each one just to kind of hear a little bit more specific breakdown of each?
I would like to do that, spend a little more time on each one.
That's how I feel as well, yes. Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yeah, I'd like to hear probably some of it. I'm not, I think it
No,
might well.
yeah. Yeah, we need to try to keep it moving, but allow us a chance to kind of hear some details. So if you can do that, Dale, I think that would be appreciated.
I'm really concerned about some departments that really need help.
Well, we'll definitely get to that. Those, I just wanted to go through some detail on this. The main item, because the next one is capital outlay. This is just what the departments have requested. The one that you see in the first column is what we're still proposing that goes through the department levels. And then you'll see on the south, it says major capital. Those are major capitals where we're saying either we need to use CO funds or some of the type of funding sanctions that we cannot provide funds for that. The one I really want to spend some time on is J1. And J1 is where we start our budget challenges and where we have known increases and proposed increases. And this is where it gets very challenging, because the ones that with stars are required that we do, and the ones that without are possible variants that we need to determine whether to increase or decrease or remove them completely. The first three are your continuous, as I mentioned before. Your law enforcement is required by the collective bargaining agreement, your county court law judge, your retirement plan, your workers' comp. And now, the Bank of America is when we passed the Commissioner's Court agreed with ABM on providing the funding, provide the repairs for the fairgrounds and other items that are on that ABM list. We went out for a loan through the Bank of America, and this Bank of America is a loan that now needs to be repaid. And this first issuance is 1.5 million. This will be coming from a transfer from the general fund. Now, there was supposed to be this is similar to what we have in a SECO plan where we're supposed to have energy savings for this. However, there's not been any work on this side that allows for energy savings. So unfortunately, 100% of this cost is going to have to be transferred from the general fund of 1.5 million over into the debt service fund to be able to pay for the loan we have in there. The rest of the items are items that we can definitely discuss. As was brought up before us by Scott Cross, as well as the judge saying that the legislature had passed the law about lifeguards in the area. We do have a $320,000 budget for an interlocal agreement with us and Port Aransas, but of that, only about $30,000 of it was for lifeguard services. I know Commissioner Chesney has added $50,000 this year, so that makes about $80,000 from that. So if we need the $410,000 to $440,000 that Scott Cross has said, we still need possible fundings for lifeguard services of right around $300,000. So that's why that's a budget challenge. The district courts, as well as our adult probation, has asked for some additional help on risk assessment, because right now there's 2 employees that work for our adult probation that we refund them on risk assessment for our jail to try to determine whether they actually belong in the jail or not, to try to reduce our population. And only 2 people doesn't allow for any sick leave or any vacation leave for the two employees, as well as the population has been anywhere from 95 to 100% in the last several months. And so they're asking for an additional employee to help expedite that, as well as to have coverage on there should there should be a need for someone on sick leave or vacation leave. So that cost is around $50,000 for an additional employee. It's not a significant increase, but it's still a bounce there. Working with the judge, there is a potential lawsuit for the piers that are along the San Patricio boundary, and we're working with the county attorney on what the evaluation of that lawsuit might be. We're projecting maybe $1 million might be needed. Now, that doesn't mean that it's $1 million cost. We just need a budget possibly for $1 million to see if that is appropriate for that particular cost. And that's what that particular item was. As we mentioned, there is the Metricom software increase in here. And as we said, we fund that through ARP funds, as well as other possible funding sources to cover that cost. Possibly maybe even the latest CO might have some funds available for use of that. That's a little tricky because it's only supposed to be the first year services for this, and this is a continuing for service for it. So we're going to continue to try to find funding. The next 3 are potential increases that we saw. There was prior year position changes anywhere from $330,000, but as y'all said, some of these positions were bought in the mid-year, and it's up to y'all to determine whether we want to continue that. If we do continue with that, it'll be a $330,000 increase in our general fund budget to continue the ones that are already on the list. Right now, there is a projection of new positions with several being deleted, as well as limited classifications of that price. So if we count everything in together, our budget challenges is $5.5 million. So that's where it gets very challenging of how we continue. Even if we don't include the very bottom numbers, we're still talking around $2.5 to $3 million with the $1.5 million Bank of America loan, as well as the other balances we have. So that's where that particular item is. If we go to tab N.
Sorry?
N.
N.
Or M, tab M, sorry, tab M. I was too many.
Oh, M.
Right now, this is what we're proposing as possible new positions. This definitely revised. This can definitely be changed. These are just what, during our communications during our budget presentations of the departments, as well as what I understood from several of us, this is where we believe that we have somewhat agreement of what we would like to possibly add in new positions. Like I said, a lot of these can definitely be removed if so choose, and the court decides that we don't need these functions, we definitely can remove them out. Now, the very bottom, the veteran cemetery, those are required to be stayed, but those are being paid by the GLO, so that balance there of the $761,000, most of that is covered by other sources, so that's not a real impact for the Commissioners Court, but it had to be reported here because they did not already exist. On page M2, you show you where we are reducing from the budget.
Hold it, Dale.
Yes.
I have a question. So the 761,966, that's a reimbursement we get from the state, right?
For most of it, yes.
And then we have to pay it first and then we get reimbursed?
No, no, we don't have to pay it first and get reimbursed.
I'm sorry?
We do not have to pay, get reimbursed.
Oh, we don't have to
We get
pay
the
for
money
it
in
first?
advance.
So really the 1,364,496, that's not really a true number there? There should be a separate.
Remember, I have to show you what our budget is being increased, but the 761,000 of that, about 600,000 of it's going to be reimbursed from, or going to be paid for by the GLO.
I'm saying that's not, so it won't be, we're not gonna show it as an expense for us though, right?
It is an expense for us.
How's that?
Accounting wise, they have to show an expense revenue. I'm required to.
But okay, we pay, that's what I'm asking, we pay them and then we get reimbursed?
They give us the money in advance to pay for it.
Okay. Well, but they gave us the money, so the
Yes.
money's already in there.
Not yet, but it will be.
Or it's supposed to be in there.
Yes.
And
We don't
then-
start till October the 1st.
So we need to, so this is an addition then, we adding those monies already here?
We have to budget for the items to be able to put in there, and this was already approved by, well, the court's already approved the Veteran Cemetery, and the General Land Office and the Veterans Land Board, our Veterans Board, has already said yes to the agreement of what we put in for salaries and benefits. We just have to budget for it.
Okay, but, all right, I just wanna make sure, when we do the budget, we're not gonna say we need 761,000.
No, you do not. There's just a entry requirement that we need to put in. These particular items that called Veteran Cemetery will be paid by the General Land Office.
So really the 533 and 49 should be added together,
Correct.
okay? All right, thanks.
So about $600,000 total for new positions.
Right.
But we're also reducing positions from the general fund of 133,000.
133?
Yes. So if you're 600, we're reducing by 133, so it's really around $400,000 possible increase for the general fund.
450,000.
Around there, yes. If these are what we agree to include.
Yeah, 467,000. Okay.
On tab N is your recommended reclassifications that we've gone through. And again, we've heard several individuals who have worked with the Human Resources Department, Julie, on several issues. Some of them it was not already a request, but one department had put in a request for this, and we agreed to remove pay group 11 from our cycle and move everybody up to either 12 or 13. And you'll see those entries here. For example, on N1, you'll see for the Calderon building, a custodian with 11.5, we're moving to 12.5. It's a small increase, but it is an increase to actually start making sure our lowest paid person is at $15 an hour. So with this, we will not have anyone paid less than $15 an hour.
That's good.
Now, we have several reclassification lists. N1 and N2 is your general fund, excluding your district attorney. And that's 144,309 with several departments in here. And again, we can definitely go through some of these and remove some of, if the court feels that some of these are not necessarily needed, we can definitely do that. We'd like to leave the ones that are going from a pay group 11 to a 12 or 13, because we want to make sure our lowest paid employee is at a pay of $15 an hour or higher. N3 is your district attorney's possible reclassification. All of those are right now, except for one is at R2, excuse me, is at 10%. One is going from an admin secretary to admin 3. We can definitely reduce that down if you also choose, as well as a victims coordinator going to a supervisor, and the supervisor unfortunately is at 24, so that would be a require, if this is what you also choose. In 4 and in 5 just basically tells you your balances that really are the ending of your district attorney, and that 1328 is a special revenue fund, and those funds are 100% funded by other sources, so there's no need for general fund on that.
Wait a minute, the DA's office is funded by other sources?
On N4, not all of it, just the N4, the one that's in their narcotic funds.
Okay.
The narcotic funds pay for that. If you so choose to keep that in there, we can. But if you do that, then you're also saying you're gonna change the, above that, because we're going from for example, the very bottom one's going from attorney 3 at pay group 33 to 35. Well, you also have attorneys 3 in your district attorney, which is general fund, at 33. So you can't do just one without doing everyone. So some of them, if we choose to remove, then we have to remove these 2. So the last page of N5 just shows you your other departments that are showing as reclassification, and there's only 2. We're reclassifying, adding additional supplemental pay for the office administrator that's doing work for our GEO contract. And then the intermediate clerk for the law library, going from an intermediate clerk to a law librarian from 1113. It's only a $624 entry. And that is basically all of our balances for our new positions. I'm not going to go through our evaluations again. These possibly can change, which is at tab O. That's your general fund valuations, your road fund valuation, as well as your hospital valuation. Some of these numbers can change. I have them in here just to have them in here for your verification. So if these numbers were correct on O2, you'll see our total increase in valuation is 3.87% for the general fund, and that includes around around a little over $600 million in new property. However, that 600 new property, the net taxable value of that new property is only $400 million, a little more than $400 million, which is challenging because in the past, we've been anywhere from $900 to $1 billion the last 3 years. This year, we're only at $400 million. So that shows you some of the effect that COVID has had on construction in the area. So that's where it gets challenging on new money coming into the county. With that, I'll be glad to start on item Q. If y'all have any departments y'all like to go over, we'll be glad to go over them now.
Which one?
Q1 is your general fund.
Oh, Q1. Change order, so total exemption.
So if you actually want to see the medical examiner, that's Q78. On the medical examiner, you see a total budget last year of $1,821,928. We're projecting an estimated actual of $1,654,415. As we see, the budget for salaries regular was $629,000. We're only spending $443. That's why we were able to bring that pathology assistant as well as the autopsy assistant in last year and not oversee the budget for those items. However, that's not part of the original 629 budget, so if we want to keep those particular individuals on staff, then that 629 will need to be increased by $135,000, making it close to $750,000. And while it's increasing the budget for your benefits from 290 up to a little bit higher. Now, it was over budget on estimated actual, and because when you have change in personnel, if your employee benefits for your medical insurance change, so If you have someone on staff that has single family or single insurance, that's $7,000 a year for the employer side. If they leave and you bring someone else in, they come in as family size. The family employer side is $19,000, so that's why we can always have an over budget on employee benefits, because if we have change in those particular items, that's what drives that. So that's basically our medical examiner. I'll be glad to go over any other department that y'all have questions on. For the general fund, I know we've got some key issues that we need to do on our funds in Fund 15, and because of where we need to bring money in for that particular item. But I'll be glad to go over any general fund that y'all might have a question of.
15, what do you mean 15? Which one?
Department, Law Library,
Oh,
that's tab T. Connie, there's bookmarks on it if you want to see the bookmarks.
I'll find it.
I would like to have one. Bookmarks, you said?
gee,
Yeah, that's on the PDF file. If you receive the PDF file, it should be there. Now, T1 is our administration adjustments for our law library, showing our estimated actuals for our photo charges, as well as our law library fees and investment fees and other income they bring in. We budgeted 171,000, we bring in 157, and so the amount for the fees from the law library that come from the district clerk didn't change significantly, but if that doesn't change, then we might have to bring something else, because if you look at page T2, you see where their budget is for their regular salaries, as well as their benefits and their Westlaw, as well as other services that we have in there of 175. So their fund balance is 38. So if we continue with this process and in the new positions, as well as the reclassification, there's adding a new position for the law library, possibly, if the court so chooses, as well as a possible reclassification of an intermediate clerk to a law library attendant. The salary for the budget of 79,000 can go up higher. And if you do that, and you're also increasing some budgets for Westlaw, because Westlaw is going up based on the agreement we have. So if we continue that process through, and you see as the fund balance has been going down significantly in the last 4 years, if we continue, I estimate that the fund balance will be negative, at least $40,000 to $50,000 negative, which means we have to provide funding from the general fund in anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 to keep it in the positive.
okay,
Or find ways of trimming the expenses, or finding means of new revenue for the law library. I know that IDA is working on possibly having some different rates for some rental charges and other items that may not start right away. So some of these other costs that are very minimal can be increased. But we need something that will bring in anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 more to cover the cost. If not, then we either provide funding from the general fund or find other means of way to fund the law library.
is that what supplies the material that we need there?
Well, they proposed some capital outlay that we cannot afford. They proposed $27,300 for a entryway into the library. That way someone can't run out with a book or any materials there. We're saying that, and I'm working with Teresa and Tyner on that side, possibly finding CO funds to cover the cost, or other kind of functioning to cover that cost, to keep that where we can get to what they need to protect the stuff in the library.
So we can say we can't trust the attorneys anymore?
Well, right now, we're not charging them anything.
Well, I mean, I'm saying, but
But
still,
that's where I know that IDA's already got a plan on possibly allowing a charge for if they come in and use our Westlaw, or come in and use a facility or other items that we might get some reimbursement for that. But we've been told, and we kind of knew this from truth, is that before IDA took over the law library, several attorneys were basically turned away, saying, we're not letting you in. So unfortunately, that's how it was done in the past. That's not the way it's done now.
Can't
know
let you
Ida and
in.
her
What
staff
was
are
the
doing
reason? Can't let you in. What was the reason for that?
Whoever the director was before, it was just saying that they couldn't do it.
But it's not like that no more, right?
Not like that anymore, no.
Right, Abraham was very, managed the library very restrictively. Yeah.
So now I know Ida's got a good plan, but now this plan might take a year or 2 or 3 years to come into fruition and as well as some of the technical stuff she's got going on where some other stuff, and I know some of the attorneys are interested in hearing what's going on in our law library. Jenny, you might want to expand a little bit on that if you can, on the need for that. And I know Ida's got some, definitely if they want to come and use a room for a while, then we have the right to charge them a certain small amount, true. If they come and use our Westlaw, we should be able to recover some of that cost, which is true. But there was never a plan designed to do that, and Ida's working on it nonstop with her staff right now to try to do something. But right now, with the known costs and the known revenue, for at least maybe 1 or 2 years, the general fund might need to provide funding.
But that's not for staff, right? That's for supplies and material.
That's for the entire operations. It includes staff.
So we have to go up on staff as far as salaries or what?
No, the salaries are not going to increase, but right now, the law library had requested a new position for a technical assistant as well as a reclassification of their intermediate clerk to a library attendant. And the library attendant was a small increase for that. It was only $700 or $800. It wasn't a big deal. But the new position was like $30,000. So if we give them both, then we're going to need some funds. And we don't have to give them both. We don't have to give them either one.
Why would we need another position there if it's, I mean,
Well, she said with the additional stuff that they're going to do for binding some stuff and some stuff that she has planned on how the other libraries run, she'll need someone to be able to, that has the knowledge and capability of doing that. So that's why she put in the request. And when she came in and did her presentation, everybody seemed to agree that this is something that was needed. So that's why I left it as a recommendation. But it can definitely be removed.
man, as much as we're struggling right now, we've got things in there that we shouldn't even be doing, I don't think, but, we keep saying we're struggling, we're gonna be short here and there, and then I think we have to, as far as I'm concerned, we gotta relook at the whole thing here. A lot of stuff we're not be able to have, we can't have, either that or you go up, with everything else.
Now, the law library fees that the district clerk collects are at the maximum amounts we can collect, so that cannot increase unless we have more cases come in. That's basically the only way that can increase is if we have more cases come in to the district clerk. And as you see on history of 161, 160, 185, 162, 156, that really hasn't changed. So I don't foresee that changing, so our only other way is rentals and commissions for either renting space in the law library or recovering some of the costs that we spend, because as you see, we spend anywhere from $37,000 to almost $40,000 a year in Westlaw for the law library.
What's like what we have to pay to order the
That's our subscription, yes.
prescriptions?
Yes.
Every year we have to pay it every year?
Yes.
And it's 37,000. I can understand that we have to pay maybe that, but, and you're saying there's a fee, the attorneys pay a fee, or can there be a membership, or can there be?
Right now, I don't believe we've had any reimbursement request from any of the attorneys for using our Westlaw, and I believe, as Tyler was saying, when Abraham was there, he wouldn't let anybody use Westlaw.
Yeah, but that's gone.
I know, it's gone, and Ida's working with the attorneys, and I believe the Bar Association knows this now, that they can use our facility, but it may be a charge, and they're interested in wanting to do this.
Well, that's what I think we should do, is just maybe do a membership fee for the, for the Bar Association, maybe they can pay the fee and.
And maybe they can help out, maybe we reach out to them and tell them what we're trying to do, and either the Defense Bar or the Bar Association, see if they can assist. That has not been done yet. I know Ida's working on some other areas to do this. Now it's the main part where it's very needed is when someone's in court and they need to do a research real fast. They go down the sixth floor and do the research on the law, Westlaw very fast and get done. But before when the other one was here, that actually have to go back to their office and then come back
You
and
know,
they
I
got used to that.
understand
so.
that, and this is great to have, and I think we've always had it, you know, maybe not as
And
updated.
like I said, we're paying almost $40,000 a year for Westlaw for the attorneys to use, and we need to probably have them help us recover the
Yeah,
cost.
I don't have a problem with that, but I don't know we need another staff there right now, you know, I mean, I just don't, I don't know, maybe.
Well, again, it's just a recommendation. We can definitely be, with the court so choose, we can definitely take it out. That's not a problem. But right now, even if we don't take it out, we'll still be short.
Short what?
Well, because if you look in your actuals from 17, 18, and 19, you see we started at 144, we went to 105, went to 57, now we're at 38. So if that continues, and we're talking about $20,000, we only have like $10,000 at the year end if we don't do anything with the
Well, yeah, I'm
library.
saying, we can put money in for materials and supplies, but, you know what I'm saying? I mean, is there any way we can get a breakdown, how many, people are using it, the library? I mean, in the last, like,
Well, I've asked, we'll get Ida to do that research.
yeah, I'd like to see how many people actually using it by month, or,
What is IDA proposing as a fee to use the law library?
She hasn't said that yet. She's still in the negotiation process of how to best do this. But you know, if the attorneys want to come use the balances, they should know that if for, you know, Westlaw, we need to determine here's our cost for this. So we need to determine the hourly rate. So they come in there and they use it for an hour or two, then we need to get reimbursed for that hour or two, whatever it might be. And that hasn't been decided yet.
I don't know, again, I'm gonna say, I think maybe it should be a membership fee, you know, you can use it whenever you want, you got a membership fee, you go, just like the libraries, you know, in libraries, you go, you become a member in the library, you got a member library card, and, you know, you go as many times as you want, you know, so, you know, and maybe it might be something the Bar Association might wanna do, I mean, you know, I don't know, I'm just saying, I mean, I guess we can try something else, I
I'm not
guess.
sure how they'll receive that notice, because as I said in the past, they were used to not getting any direction from the law library. But if it gets too pricey, then again, they'll continue going back to their offices to do their research there, or call their staff to do the research instead of doing it at the law library. But we want to try to do something to recover some of our costs for that, as well as if they come in our library and use a room just for whatever it might be, whether they meet with a client or whatever might be the case, then we charge them some kind of rate.
Yeah,
And
well,
that
you know,
hasn't been said yet.
and I agree with that, Dale, but I'm just saying if it cost goes up 10,000, maybe that's something we need to work with the you know, the Bar Association, say, hey, you know what, you pay 5, we pay 5. You know, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I think we'll probably need to sit down with them and see what we can work out, I guess, I don't know.
Again, we'll work with Ida and see what she has, her plans are, and we'll have her come talk to y'all about how best to establish the law library.
Okay. All right, thank you, John.
The rest of the departments are pretty clean in where they're at. There's no big increases for inland parks, coastal parks. Now, coastal parks does have that one for their lifeguards, and we did put additional $50,000 in it. You'll see that in tab W. Of course, this one was printed before that was included, so there it is, $50,000 in interlocal agreement for lifeguards. It says interlocal agreement beach cleaning, but it's interlocal agreement with us in Port Aransas. Last year, we put in about $30,000 increase for that particular item for lifeguards with Port Aransas. The rest is additional services we share with them. So the 30 and plus the 50 on top of that would be the 80. And if Scott Cross said we need anywhere from 410 to 440, so if we need that, then we need additional $300,000 for more lifeguards. So that's where we brought in that lifeguard situation. Now, the budget they have, it would still require additional transfer to them. I know they're starting to receive more funds in their RV parks and all this stuff that's coming in higher and higher, because if you look at their W-2, you see their rental and commission is $1.3 million on that. Well, that's because they have now both Pottery Barley and RV, and IB McGee RV parks up and running. So we're probably gonna increase that budget some. So that covers some of that cost, but not significantly enough to cover the entire $300,000 if that's a continuation of every year. We did do a small reduction of the transfers to them from the general fund that we're proposing by reducing it by $140,000. So we're dropping it from 1.3 million to 1.2 million. So we already did see a reduction in possible funding for a transfer to Coastal Parks, but again, they'll possibly need the funding for the law library, the lifeguards. It's a long day. It's a long day
Got
Monday.
that law library in your mind, man.
For the lifeguards in that particular issue, because there was a law that passed that required us to do lifeguards. The rest there is, well, I'll be glad to go over any other of your detailed items. If not, I'll be glad to go over any part of this that you want to discuss. But that right now is our start of our budget presentation, budget workshop for 21-22. We have a lot of possible recommendations that we can definitely work through and determine what we definitely do want to include or not include in our proposed. However, until we get the tax rates, and my staff is working on them constantly, don't be surprised if you hear complaints from our appraisal district and from the comptroller how many times we're going to be calling them. So be prepared to get some nasty responses from them on what we're doing, but we have to do it to try to get the numbers for us. But until we can actually give you what our no new revenue tax is, how much money we're going to receive from our new property, and until we can get you those numbers, we're really not at a level to say what else we need to do. But for other than that, we show you where we're at and what we're trying to do and how the requests are and what our proposals are. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have at the moment.
Dale, the J1, those are the things you're saying that we gotta have at least up to the lifeguard, right?
Well, no, the ones with the stars on them are what we are required to do. Now, the lifeguards, we're trying to find some services for that, and it could come down to, it depends on how we interpret that, the services we're rendering. We're looking on all the levels of area. We're possibly even talking to our state to see if they can possibly help us with funding on that. We're looking into some grants to see if we can find for that. We're also looking to see if some of this can be through the ARP funds, which we're not sure yet. But anything that's got a asterisk to it is required. Okay. Means that we don't have a choice because either a personnel policy or a bargaining agreement or the law that passed or a change in some certain things, we are required to do everything from the top down to the 1.5 million. Everything below that is up to the court.
How about, can Port Aransas help us with lifeguard?
Well, they're already providing this, but the amount of lifeguards that they're talking about, it's not really a function that the Port Aransas can do, because most of it's going to be covering the beaches we maintain, not the beaches that Port Aransas maintains. And we're also trying to work with the city and see if we can work with them. But I would believe when Scott Cross came with his plan that we working with the Emergency Service District Number 2, I believe that's who was here with us, on having them go through to them, and then we have an interlocal agreement with them to provide them with our pro rata share of the funding for the lifeguards, but that's as far as it's gotten so far.
Okay, I just wanted.
Hey, Dale,
Yes.
excuse me, this is the budget for 2022 as well?
Yes. 22, yes.
Okay, and I heard you said something about how COVID affected the revenue.
Yes.
Is there a possibility? I mean, it's always a possibility, but have we taken into consideration that it might affect it further on?
Yes.
And,
Basically, the ARP funds give us a challenge of calculating the revenue loss for our COVID-related expenses, and we've calculated our expenses of what we expect our revenue loss is, and right now that's around $3.5 million. We've submitted the claim over to Haggerty and other consultants to determine whether we've done everything correctly. It has a connection in there that it goes to the next 3 years on a certain percentage-wise. It's pertinent about how the fees and other stuff may increase or decrease in certain levels, and we've already factored those into account. It's not a significant amount, but we project that there will definitely be revenue losses in 21, 22 for COVID-related expense. For example, if these courts don't get running again, we're not gonna see any reimbursement from the state for jury. Well, we don't have the expense, but we don't have the revenue. And if this COVID-related expenses continue and these companies aren't rebounding, then interest rates aren't going to increase. And as I showed you, we lost over $1 million of interest.
Correct.
So, right now, like I said, we've calculated $3.5 million worth of revenue loss possible. But the ARP funds have restrictions on what those can be used for. So we're working on what those can be used for to cover some certain areas, and we can work some of these costs that we've talked about on this can possibly be used with those funds. But we want to make sure we don't violate any of the rules, because if you do, then you return the funds back. But we're studying this the best we can to try to find what can be used with the ARP funds and what can we use the $3.5 million for as a revenue loss. Now, it pretty much says we can't use that $3.5 million to recover reserves. Says that right in the letter, so we have to find some form of function to use that $3.5 million for, but we can switch from that, so it theoretically can, because we can use that $3.5 million somewhere else and not be forced to use the general fund net, and that recovers reserve without recovering the reserve, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. I also want to ask, do you think if we approve some of this positions, then if something goes wrong in 2022 with the revenue, will we find ourselves in a jam trying to, get the monies to pay for these positions and anything else that we might be adding up,
Well, right now, the budget time is the time that the court has the control of the funds on budget on what they allow for position-wise. So now would be the time that if someone requires or recommending a new position, and if it's approved, once it's approved, then really the court has no control over that. And I'll make sure the county attorney agrees with me on that, because once you give a position over to an elected official or that, it's theirs until the next budget cycle. And so now would be the time to say that, no, we don't agree with these recommendations on new positions, or this would be the time to say we believe that there might not be a possible reduction of force. Now, I'm not saying they are, but now would be the time to do it.
Okay.
Because you now have the control of the budget cycle of saying, okay, your office has this much funds to do with. You have to figure out how to do it with it, whether you cut positions or cut this. That's your choice.
My concern is like, we've seen a lot of increase in public works with all this flooding going on, okay? We've seen a lot of concerns in the DA department, okay? Not being able to hold on to some attorneys. And, of course, the jail. We need to be, careful how we do that one. So I think we need to take a hard look of how we're going to spend, or what are we going to do? And that's between myself and the commissioners. See what y'all
Now, the jail's a little tricky, as well as the sheriff's office and the constable's office, because they're under a collective bargaining agreement. We don't have a lot of control. So the court agreed on the last collective bargaining agreement that goes for another 2 years, if I'm correct. And it includes a 2.5% to 3% increase in the next 2 years. So that, once we get to the next level of collective bargaining agreement, then the court can decide how to do it. Now, you can still tell the sheriff and work with the sheriff that, if you don't believe you need the 297 or 255 corrections officers because of so many vacancies, but you can definitely cut now without violating the rules. We just can't change salary.
No, I wasn't talking about the positions, working people position. I was the concern of the expense we're gonna have with the jail.
Yes.
We need to prepare for that.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the collective bargaining or people that are working there. Those are needed.
A lot of the jail costs have been gone over many years, and we almost budget for maximum capacity. But unfortunately, our jail is, over 40-something years old.
Yeah.
We've got over 1,000 beds, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in our jail. And it stays anywhere from 80 to 100% fill all the time. So that's something we always try to, and the sheriff is always good about trying to budget correctly, but unfortunately, that is our biggest expense, and we try to make sure we give them what he needs to operate that, especially on the food budget, where we almost budget what it'd be for 100% all year long.
I agree. I'm just wondering, I'm all concerned about the hourly paid employees that are the lowest paid employees. Them I'm concerned about. I would like to see them,
And some of our reclassification is trying to move our anyone that's in a pay group 11 up to a pay group 12. Pay group 12, the lowest paid is $15 an hour. So we'll be at the $15 per hour, and if we look at the number of employees at that level, there's only like 8 or 9 at that level. Most are higher.
Okay. All right, sir, thank you.
You got one here on M1, courthouse security, build badging coordinator. We already have one.
Basically, that is a transfer from the general fund. It was, it's going to 1305. It was in the general fund. So you look at the negatives, you'll see the negative badging coordinator in a negative to the general fund of $72,000 to the badging coordinator. And not really a new position, but that's how they wanted me to report this in here for that as badging coordinator. So it's really a zero, it's actually a reduction of the general fund cost and a slight increase of the courthouse security cost, but that is not a significant increase because there already is an employee there. And you'll see that we also have a reduction in the 1305 courthouse security of the Secretary 1 of around 40-some thousand, and it's moving over here to 1570 as a increase for that. That's just how they wanted me to report this in as a new and a deleted position. So it's not really a new or deleted position. It's just moving it from courthouse security to the general fund, and from general fund to courthouse security.
So we shouldn't show the whole amount as added to the budget, right? I mean, if it's not a new position, that money's there.
Well, you see that 553 is a new position for the general fund, and you subtract the 133,800, which includes the reduction of the badging coordinator. That's where I get the $400,000. You'll see on M2, you'll see the badging coordinator from 3,700, which is a general fund, of the negative 72,762. So we're reducing the general fund's positions of 133,800. So you can subtract that from the 553, and you'll get the balances of 420.
So the security house, security secretary 1, that's a new position, right?
Well, it's a position in the courthouse, in the courthouse security funds, moving to the general fund. So it's a new position for the general fund, but it's no position for courthouse security. So that's why it's being deleted from the courthouse security fund on M2 and add to the general fund on M1. And then on M1, we're in 1305 courthouse security, we're adding the badging coordinator, but we're subtracting it from the general fund on M2. That's how they wanted me to report this. It's
When you say they, who's they?
court administration.
Keep saying.
Commissioner, them over there.
Keep saying they, who's they? I mean,
Teresa and them over there wanted me to report that way.
it should be us, not they. It should be us.
One commission is trying to show that position is in the general fund, but we're moving it to the courthouse security, which is a special revenue. So it's a new position in 1305, even though it's gonna wash.
Yeah, it's a new position that you're right. It's a new position, but the funds were already there, I guess.
Yes.
Right, the funds were
Yes.
originally in general fund, but now it's gonna
So
be in
we
the
shouldn't
special
have to add the
revenue.
whole funds as an expense to the budget, right? I mean, because they were already there.
Well, we have to add the funds to the 1570, but we're starting it from the 3700, so unfortunately, it's an add and subtract, but in total number, it's not there, correct?
And how about the building superintendent secretary 1, where's that at?
Well, currently, that was the secretary that was in courthouse security. You'll see that on M2 as being a reduction.
It's just the
That's just
opposite.
moving it from 1305 to the general fund.
Right.
So that money, then, so that's a new position though, right?
In 1570, because it's coming
1570
now
it is,
from
yes.
special revenue over to general fund. So it's still a wash.
From special revenue?
Right.
Yes.
But you also have a courthouse security secretary one. And that's coming from where?
Courthouse Security, Secretary One is moving from the special revenue into the building superintendent department, which is general fund.
And courthouse security is Secretary One is being a deleted position on M2.
Right.
What position is that that's moving?
It's the Secretary One. She was originally funded in courthouse security, which is a special revenue, and now she's gonna be in 1570, which is building superintendent, which is general fund.
But she has nothing to do with courthouse security?
Right now, she does when the employee gets your new badge, she's basically was doing that, but now we have a badging coordinator that does that. So her job description, on top of everything she does for Public Works, she was doing badging for courthouse security. So technically, she really wasn't doing a lot for courthouse security. So we're moving it back to 1570, where building superintendent really needs a secretary. And the badging coordinator is now doing all the badging for everybody.
But the sheriff also has a badging coordinator.
That is the one, yes, that we're removing that and moving it to 1305.
So you, okay, also, everything on the red you're removing then, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And something else to note, as far as the district attorney's office, the 5 positions that are here on the new position schedule are positions that are being deleted from the pretrial 1323 account here,
Right.
because that department doesn't have any money. It's over budget right now.
Right now,
So
because
the
of COVID.
request is to reallocate these 5 individuals over to general fund.
And as you'll see, the bottom line of that, the DA is willing to transfer $310,000 a year to cover that cost.
They're gonna do it, how much are we gonna put in?
If the total amount was probably 150,
150,000?
because they're gonna give you 310, and if they got more, they'll give you more, but right now, because of COVID-related expenses and the people going through pretrial diversion is very limited, their funds are negative. If we keep them in 1323, then there would be a required immediately reduction of force for the district attorney's office.
Okay. This, Nueces County Development Senior Clerk 2, what is that? What does that go?
She was originally a temporary in the Nueces County Development Commission. She was a temporary, and we're proposing to make her a senior clerk too in that department.
Senior Clerk 2 is a full-time position?
That's correct.
I thought we already had somebody, oh, she was a temp.
She's a temp.
And the, bless you.
Thank you.
And the 1328, that forfeiture funds, you did a new position, criminal investigator? I thought we already had one.
They have 2, I think.
Two, yeah, maybe two, I don't know.
They have 2 in their special, in their district attorney funds. This is an additional investigator in their forfeiture funds, which they do have funds for. So none of this cost will be general fund.
Yeah. And in the jail, we're saying 2 maintenance people, right?
Yeah, the sheriff, I had a conversation with him, and last year, during the process, he gave up a few of his correctional officers to bring more mechanical maintenance employees into the building maintenance division, as well as the building superintendent cost. However, he's saying that he's had a hard time getting anyone into his office to do any repairs to the call boxes or the lights or whatever fixtures that he might have. So he was requesting 4 building maintenance workers. I'm proposing that we recommend 2. These will be under his direction and under the direction of one of his captains to do the maintenance in both the jail as well as the annex, in only those locations.
Not, it won't be nothing on the public works.
These will be under the sheriff's office, correct?
Okay, there's a couple of more, I mean, there's a couple of things I'd like to consider later on, but I need to,
Okay.
when we go down the road. Okay, I just want to make sure I got everything clear here on that one, because I wasn't too sure. Okay, thank you very much.
That senior clerk for the public works or superintendent, was it a senior clerk deal or just a secretary?
For which one?
For public works or
I didn't see that.
the building superintendent,
That's with Secretary 1?
secretary one?
Yes,
And she'll be working strictly for the superintendent?
correct.
Okay. I remember Public Works was requesting environmental secretary to work with the
She's there,
environmental enforcement,
yeah.
senior clerk.
I've got the environment enforcement, I've got a senior clerk there. Yes.
Thank you, Dale.
They had requested a senior clerk as well as 2 enforcement officers. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford the 2 enforcement officers. But with the need that they said that they spend a lot of their time in their office running reports and can't be out there. So I felt it was justifiable to add the senior clerk, so to help them have someone else do the reports so they can be out in the field. Unfortunately, we can't add more staff there, but maybe next year we can consider it.
All right, thank you.
Why can't that one be a senior clerk? You got the temp going to a senior clerk, you got the environmental going to senior clerk, so why can't that secretary be the senior clerk?
Well, the secretary was already a secretary level at pay group 14, where a senior clerk is at pay group 13. So if anything, that'd be a senior clerk 2, which is at pay group 15, which would be an increase.
But it's not an increase, a new position, all right?
It's a new position for the general fund. It's not a new position in its entirety, because we've had the Secretary 1 as part of courthouse security, and we're just moving it to the general fund, and we're keeping their salary as she was, because she was at a pay group 1408, which means she's been here for several years. We maintain the Secretary 1 level. So if we removed it down to senior clerk, that would be a reduction of about 5% in salary.
If you go to senior clerk, it'd be a reduction of salary?
Clerk is a 13-1, and she's at a 14-8. Secretary 1's at a pay group 14.
I think she'd rather stay a secretary one.
I'll check it. Okay, that's all I got for now. Thank you very much.
Right now, there's only, for emergency management, there's a recommendation for the disaster recovery specialist. But the judge is also going to request that the emergency preparedness planner also be included.
Both of them?
Yes, sir.
I don't agree with that. I think we should, the planner, I kind of agree, but not the, and I think there's more, the prepare planner is the most important. Disaster recovery, I don't know if we really need that one or not, but, or either one of them for that matter, but I'm gonna, I would consider the planner more, I would consider the planner because it's pre, and we all have to be prepared, right? So I think that job is important, probably to pre-plan as far as the recovery. So, we've always got recovery teams out there, so. But anyway, okay, that's good. Thank you very much. That's all I got. Got a lot of positions, man, we need to look at. There's a lot of positions that are not here, we need to look at probably, you know.
Yeah, that, tab B shows you all the plans that we've gone through, that shows, what the court's taking action on during the middle of the year on adding positions that were already there. But as you said, Commissioner, that don't necessarily mean that you get it for the 21-22 budget year, but, that's what we've seen in our history of looking through the court minutes to see what was there. So, those are the positions on B-17 and showing you what we've seen for the new position, as well as, I believe also B-16 and B-17, showing what was added and what was taken away and what was given up for some of the positions. And as we said, some of them are very, very pricey, and if there's no action taken, then these are required to be added to the budget.
Right. Okay.
I'm back. Where are we, just so that we can have,
We're going over some of the questions on the new positions on tab M 1 and 2.
okay, and the last one you just did was the,
I was just telling, because there was a question brought up on B-17, when we added in, I think it was January, Teresa, you said it was correctly, in January, where we added the autopsy technician and the pathology assistant for the medical examiner, and I see that both these positions have been filled. And I was saying that this is a required addition to the budget if we don't do anything with this. And then Commissioner Gonzalez said maybe this is something that they know in the middle of the year, since they had funds this year, there's no guarantee money next year. So, but if we don't do anything, then we need to add $158,000 to the ME. We need to subtract $117,000 from court administration. We need to add to the district attorney, and the total amount is around $333,000. That is a required addition to the budget if we don't take action by removing these positions.
okay,
And that was on B-16 and 17, where we show all the adjustments in mid-budget year of what it occurred. And I'll be glad to go through any item that y'all just would like to talk about at the moment now with our general fund or other funds. Tomorrow, I'll bring in some stuff from a couple of our special revenue funds that might need some assistance, similar to what we need for 150, the courthouse security fund. There's been a request from the sheriff's office to add some more staff on the SecOp that we have currently downstairs, on putting a office on both sides of the courthouse where we enter in the courthouse for security-wise. That's additional $100,000 to $200,000 that would require general fund action. We're working on doing the funding for our Nueces County Development Commission. We're going to move some money from some of the funds we get from our capital credits going to be deposited there. So it may not be necessary to discuss that, but I'd just like to show you where we're at in those particular items, as well as some other funds. But most of the funds we have that show you we're in question, we've already discussed. I'll be glad to go over any item in the general fund that you feel need to be discussed, and any item that we have. And as we said, these are just very, very beginning recommendations. Any and all items can be changed, and most likely could be and will be. But these are my best recommendations we have, as we saw in tab, was it M, or when was our budget estimates? On tab J, where we talk about our budget challenges, where we have known challenges, and that's right at almost $3 million right now, to $2 to $3 million without anything else into take in consideration. These are known expenses that we don't have a choice. We have to provide these because of our personnel policy or our CBA or the law that took into effect for a county court law judge, as well as retirement, workers' comp, and the loan we have to repay from the Bank of America for our ABM contract we have to do repairs of the fairgrounds and other locations. So those are required entries. So anything below that is definitely up for negotiation and discussion. But those are the very top. We don't have a choice. We have to fund those. And until I can get you a cost of where we are on our revenue taxes and where the rates are going to be, I really can't go into real depth and discussion on what we need to do and how we need to do it until I know. But as I mentioned, we had a little over $600 million of new property, and of that $600 million, only a little more than 425 million was taxable, which means that there was a significant drop in new valuations or new construction. So it's not going to provide the revenue that we hoped for to begin with, because that'll only probably bring in around $1 million of new money. So we've already used that in the very, very beginning of this stuff. So this is a challenge we have to work with, and where the court wants to take, we'll have to see where the court wants to go with it.
So the only, on your budget challenges, the one thing I can point out to the court is that the proposed increase in Metrocom software, 546,621, could be prioritized, commissioners, for American Relief Plan Act. It would qualify, we believe, for the ARPA funding, and that would assist us. It is the only one out of all of them at this moment, although we are certainly going to explore others, but out of the ones that are here listed, it is the only one that I believe would absolutely fit. And so that would be a way to remove 546,621. Are there any questions for Dale on the budget challenges? All of these, again, are challenges that exist. They're not ones we get choices on, except for what I just mentioned in the Metrocom software. Remember that lifeguard services are now statutorily defined for us, and this takes place on September 1, I believe, 2021, Tyner. That's a result of the new law. So there's nothing here that, except for obviously those new positions and limited reclasses that we could, well, no, those were the ones that were already
Discussed, but
Discussed.
definitely those are still
up for grabs.
up for grabs. If the court wants to fund any or all or none, and then we can definitely
Right.
negotiate that up or down. Same thing for the new position or the reclassifications. The prior year position changes that occurred near budget, as I mentioned to the commissioners, that yes, the court still has action for them, and most of the positions that were there have been filled. So if we don't want to fund them, then we're required to terminate.
Right, so really, you're looking at 700, say 900, potentially, 1/4 of potential on the chopping block, so to speak, or on the table. But that only comes from the moving Metrocom software out of this list and into the ARPA side, and potentially obliterating all of the other reclass and new positions. But just on this, are there any questions for Dale, just on the budget challenge? And what does everybody think about the proposed increase in Metrocom software, moving that to ARPA? Commissioner Hernandez?
Well, Judge, I'm not too familiar with ARPA.
Okay,
You want to enlighten me, let me know?
I'll be happy to. It's the American Relief Plan Act. Those are the funds that we've received, $35 million this year. We'll receive $35 million next year. So my proposal is to take $546,000 and basically say, commit as a court that we will address that need, which is, it's not a want, it's a need, with those funds. And so those funds have permissive uses. One of the permissive uses is technology. And I have vetted this with our specialist, Haggerty, and they believe this would qualify for eligibility. We already have this money in our treasury. It came to us several months back. And so all I'm suggesting is that this Metrocom software could be paid for and moved out of this column, giving us some breathing room on this list.
So you're saying that we will be reimbursed?
No, we already have the money.
I know we have the money, but
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that it qualifies. I would say that as a court, we could, not today, but we could vote on making Metrocom software funding source ARPA. And then we would basically submit the paperwork and that would be that. The money is here, but the way it works is we have paperwork. That's what we have a lot of paperwork that goes along with it, but it's been identified as a low risk for having it clawed back. So it qualifies and we can move it into that column.
Judge,
Judge is saying this was when it was brought up to the court by the city, it was a one-time $1.1 million software upgrade, as well as a small amount of increase for some of the salaries that made the 546. So it's all qualifying most likely for the ARP funds. So this will not be a future budget requirement.
well, it's definitely we need it. So, yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, and do you have any other questions on any of these? These are the ones that we have to put forth, except for the last two.
Judge, I didn't put it as a
Last
budget
three.
challenge on Q16, if you have a chance to turn to Q16. That's our IT director. I know Daryl just came in, and there was a lot of software requirements built into that request. I haven't taken any out yet. I know I'm going to be working with him. I know the judge is going to be working with him, trying to determine which ones can qualify for the ARP funds, or well as what can qualify. Because when the court approved the Series 21 COs, there was, I believe, about $1 million for IT-related expense. Now, we still need to remember for IT-related expense, it must be the first year of the contract. So anything that's in the first year only, we can possibly move the 21 COs or possibly go through the ARP funds to try to reduce that $791,000 that's currently still in information technology. I haven't taken it out yet, but I was wanting to work with Daryl to see what we can do. And since he just recently started, I didn't want to try to get him to say yes or no right away. So I'm negotiating with him, and I guarantee you that will go down.
Okay. So Commissioner Modis, you're on the line. Do you have any questions for Dale on this particular, going back, if you'd go back one slide, Connie. No, I'm sorry, where we were before on budget challenges.
J1.
J1. I mean, this is really critical because this is your starting point, right? So once you know what your tax assessed value is and what your no new revenue rate is and what your voter approved rate is, this is where you start. This is what we've accepted. There's no going back on most of the items 1 through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know,
8 of them.
yeah, I mean, up until you get to that Metrocom software, that thin blue line, everything above is set, right? Those are non-negotiables, and I just want to make sure everybody understands those. Those are ones that we are accepting as we have to have. And if you listen to what Dale just told you, we're expecting only revenue of under, Dale, what did you say, $1 million? I'm sorry?
We're about $1 million new property.
$1 million in new property. Well, you can see you've already eclipsed that. You know, I mean, there's just not a lot of new revenue there. But all of those are needs, except for the bottom ones, which we have the ability to be flexible with. Commissioner Gonzalez, I don't know if Commissioner Modis is still available. But Commissioner Gonzalez, do you have any questions for Dale on this list?
No, the thing is, we're just looking at the, from the Astros up to Bank of America, of course, the lifeguards, we don't know how much more we're gonna need, but I know it's gonna be a need, you know, because we're gonna have to have it. The risk assessment, I don't know, but,
That's CSCD, right?
That's correct.
right, I don't know, really, I'm not counting on that, but I'm going back to the proposed increase on Metrocom. And the lawsuit, of course, that we need to make sure we have something aside with the lawsuit.
So I'm sorry, tell me what you said about the software. Are you in favor of having the ARPA
Metrocom, yeah.
funds?
But I'm only, the Metrocom is only if we, and I think the ARPA, we can use it, but I understand, I've been hearing things that, it might not, I don't know who's saying that do we get something already from
Yes.
the state or the federal saying that, it's okay, we use it for, Metrocom? Or
Yes, the software, yes.
software?
Only the
It's not just
technology.
coming from Hagerty, right? I mean, it's coming from somewhere else.
So I have spoken with the Department of Treasury myself, and the way it works is you submit questions, and we talked specifically about the technology, and we do believe this is something that's very, very much qualifies. Software, technology,
I understand it was mostly for like, a lot of it was for drainage and wastewater and I forgot, there was only like three or four things.
what you're remembering is accurate. There are concentrated efforts, but for example, the first thing it does is addresses COVID-19. The second thing it does is address broadband access. It addresses infrastructure regarding water and sewer. It addresses mental health programming, and it addresses technology. So it's not just one thing, it's
No, that's
multiple
about
things.
three or four things, but I'm saying, as far as it, I'm just saying, if we can tie in Metrocom with it, is that gonna be part of like a broadband thing? We're gonna try to tie it into that, so,
No,
no?
no, broadband is totally different. That's connectivity. This is software to run Metrocom. This is what Peter Collins came and briefed us on. I think the thing is if you can hypothetically get there with me, just pretend for a moment that it qualifies. Dale's not gonna let us go into something if it doesn't qualify or if it's not eligible, but let's just presume that it is eligible.
If it is
Would you
eligible,
wanna move
sure,
it?
I don't have a problem.
Okay, I think that's really the question. We'll just work off that. Commissioner Modis, do you agree with that statement? If you get it to qualify, which is what we've been working on feverishly for months now, would you think that that's a good thing to do, is to move it over? He might be busy. He might not be able to hear me.
Excuse me, Judge.
Yes,
The total-
ma'am.
The total cost for known things that we have to do is $2,448,622.
Give me just 1 second. Let me write that one
Sorry,
down.
$2,448,622.
what's that?
That's the total of things we have to do, not including
Oh,
all the
okay, that's-
asterisks.
Yeah, right.
Did you take out can I have it? Can I have it? This? Okay.
The workers' comp,
No,
2 million what?
I'll have to call.
448,622.
448.
And did you take out Metrocom software?
It's not included, it's only the stars.
Okay, thank you. Now, on the lifeguard, just so that we're clear, we know lifeguard is a star, it's just we don't know if that's the amount. Is that? Could you give me what I call a high-low? Because we really should make it a star, but we should make it a star at a certain amount, maybe.
Again, we're trying to find out if we find additional fundings for whatever might be the case. I know you're working with Maria, trying to possibly find grants for it. I
Yes.
know this may or may not qualify under the rescue plan because it is for security, is for life protection. So some of it may qualify for there, but again, it'd be only 1 year only, or 2 years only. So if
But
I
it could
had to
help.
give a number, I'd say half of it.
Yeah, let me explain that to the courts, because I think that's really important. So the 300,000 could qualify, so we're gonna have lost revenues of over $3 million. We could take $300,000 of that lost revenue for the next 2 years, which would be 600,000. And because lifeguarding is a government service, again, as long as we qualify it, we could take that off this list. It would not help us forever, but it would get us through a very difficult time. And I think that is a very smart thing to do. So again, we could remove, and again, why is it important to move Metrocom and move lifeguard? Well, because that's 850,000 you can now use for limited reclasses or limited new positions. It's very, very important. So again, we're not here to guarantee it, but we think that lifeguard services could be placed in that other column. And if so, Would you be willing to talk about doing that? Again, it's kind of a trick question. It's supposed to be of course we would, if you're saving $300,000. But anyway,
You're saying, but you might not save.
how would we not save?
Well, I don't know, you keep saying that we might be able to use it, can we use it or not? I mean,
Well, look, the issue is that there are no guarantees in life.
right, that's what
And,
I'm
but,
saying.
and so you need to put, that's why I said it should be an asterisk, but I do believe we can get it qualified.
Well, I have the lifeguards and asterisk here on mine, I put it an asterisk on it.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the sheet on the screen.
So we add 150, then we're at 2,598,622.
Okay, so again, we're just, we're just playing here with what we believe to be the right number. And then on the risk assessment, let me address that. Because of the backlog of the courts for the past year and a half plus, a CSCD is in a really difficult situation. I also believe that this would qualify for government services that we provide, and we could use some of our lost revenues, okay, for this 50, if you're really trying to make things qualify. But these are choices, not hard and fast, we should do these things. But that could also be a way to assist us just for the next 2 years. Because that one is a must in my book. I mean, we don't have a choice. I mean, we have a backlog system. These are the late-term effects of COVID. And then, of course, the valuation lawsuit, you've got to prepare for that. And then we made prior year position changes because they were crucial. I'm not sure which one we made that wasn't crucial for this coming year. But, so I think that one gets us obligated as well. And when you do that number, even if you took away the 50, Teresa, and you took away the lifeguard, you're back at 2.8 or 2.7.
748.
2.748, I'm just rounding up, yeah. So those are the ones, that's our biggest challenge right there. This page, you can't really move on unless you understand and accept that we have about at least a floor of about 2.7 worth of bills to pay. And a potential new revenue of only $1 million.
Judge, do you want to mention about adding the second position for emergency management?
Yeah.
to planner?
So the reason I had you on in the other room, but I couldn't quite hear very well because I was on a TDM call, is the nature of these positions. We are forced with yet another disaster. You might think it's the same disaster, but I'm here to tell you it's not the same disaster. Delta is a new disaster in my mind, and I actually wish they would qualify it as such because it's doing different things to our community. And without having the right structure upstairs in emergency management, we're forced to contract this stuff out. And we can be much more efficient with our dollars, which can get repaid. These people, if they're working disasters, we get to take their salaries and claim it for FEMA. And these are absolutely essential to getting the work done that we need to do inside emergency management. And again, we're paying a lot more on a contract basis because we don't have these full-time positions. Unfortunately, these viruses are here to stay, probably for our lifetime. After the Delta variant leaves us, I'm sure there'll be a Lambda or an iota that wants to come and see us. And after that, who knows, there'll be another novel virus. This is our sad future, is that we've been exposed. And this is just one type of disaster. You can see how quickly from May to July, we had 6 weeks of disasters. I'm going to ask that you really consider this as a benefit to the county and a benefit to saving dollars for this county. Because again, if we don't have these people, let me tell you what happens when there's a disaster. We're calling them in. That's the way it works. if you don't have them full-time, we will pick up the phone and we will call them, because your county cannot do without these types of positions for response. Now, let me tell you, another good thing is these could also be paid for the next 2 years out of ARPA funds. And so, I think that's something really important to consider. And then in 2 years, you don't think that you've got value? Well, fine, discontinue them. But I'm telling you, for the next 2 years, we are in the thick of it with booster shots, with pediatric vaccinations, with Delta variants, and that's just a virus. That's no hurricane, no floods, no explosions, no environmental issues. These two people keep us safe. And again, you can add zeros to the end of these numbers if we have to go contract for them. This is an economic decision. Please make the right decision and support this. If the Delta variant, had we not surged this summer, you can ask Dale, I had suggested 1 out of the 2, but I will tell you that we're going to spend $50,000 in the next 30 days with the same type of description. And even if you don't want to ratify it, they're coming, because that's how it works in emergency management. You have to get the people to respond appropriately for the crisis. So it's 90, let me see, I'm sorry, what is it? Is it 90?
For the two, it's 89,500.
Okay, I'm just gonna call it 90. For $90,000, I would like to suggest that we use ARPA funding to help us, at least cover one of them, if not both. There's just no way we can do without it. And if you doubt me, come shadow us today for the rest of the afternoon. I promise you, you will get to see firsthand why we need these folks. And in fact, we do have 2 people upstairs right now that are working, and the cost is expensive to our county, but there is no other way. So I think these are 2 things that can also be moved to the ARPA side, again, just for 2 years. So if we're keeping tabs on ARPA, we've made 2 suggestions. One was 90,000 for this, 50,000 for CSCD, and 300,000 for lifeguards. Was there one more, Teresa? Metrocom, 526 for a grand total of 350. 626. I'm sorry, what was my total? 800. 900, almost $1 million. If you want to take $1 million off this budget, you could do so with ARPA funding for 2 years. That's a decision we'll have to make together, but are there any other issues with regards to those budget challenges? Dale, did you have any other, is it kind of open floor now, just to see who wants to talk about anything in particular?
Yeah, kind of open for on, because we went through all the budget items, will be some more clarification tomorrow, says, we still need to bring up, like I said, the courthouse security fund, which is at 1305, and the sheriff had requested some more staff and possibly getting both sides of the courthouse secured on entry into the courthouse, so that's gonna cost some money. Don't have that anywhere in here yet, so that can be anywhere from another $100,000 to $200,000 if the court so chooses to do that. Or do we maintain the current location and bring up the equipment there to proper sizes? I know the sheriff's got some concerns on the new law that was passed on open carry and also some other stuff on how we need to secure the main entry to the courthouse. So that's something we need to bring in. And I mentioned that the NCDC does have some funding issues right now, but we're working on getting the money from the capital credit to transfer, make sure it automatically gets deposited in there. There may still be a requirement from the general fund to provide some additional funding. And we know that they're going to start doing some new fundraising there in the near future, because we've added some staff there that now requires to make sure we have the proper funding. So other than that, what we've been talking about so far with the general fund, I've gone through all the departments. If you really want to try to see about some stuff, I've gone through every department's, every request. I've tried to narrow it down, what I believe is necessary to run these departments. I don't feel that they have any room for a reduction. We did that one year, and if y'all remember, we had nothing but budget change orders after budget change orders after budget change orders because they couldn't continue running the office. A lot of these departments need some stuff, but however, these departments have done a very significant reduction, because if you look at my estimates to where we're at like 85 to 87% of budgeted expense. I know a lot of it's because of our courts not running, so we're not expending any jury expense, we're not expending a lot of court appointment expense, so we're not expending a lot of money there, but the other departments are doing well within their budget and well within this means, so we're running this county very efficiently.
Okay, so, and do we have we don't have any update or any news from the chief appraiser's office yet?
Lisa's working with them. I told the commissioners before, you may not have heard that you may start getting some nasty calls from the appraisal district, from the comptroller, how many times we keep calling them and bugging them, but.
Well, we
we're
have a
doing our-
timeline too.
We're doing our best to try to get everything we need, because we have Wednesday, try to get the values for our no new revenue tax and voter approved rates. Because if we don't do that, we have to do it on the 11th, because if we don't do the 11th, we basically broke the budget calendar, and all the required notices and publications, we'll be hard pressed to meet those.
Yeah,
And on the 11th, if we don't do it on the 4th, on the 11th, I might be submitting the rates, and y'all might be proposing a rate the same day, if we have to do it on the 11th.
But
So be prepared.
we do have scheduled workshops for the 9th and the 10th prior to that 11th, if it gets moved to the 11th.
And we're working as hard as we can. We got today and tomorrow to try to get everything done. And like I said, we're gonna do nothing but constantly call them and say, okay, where's the numbers? Where are the numbers? And the biggest problem is the comptroller just not doing the changes in the software that are needed. And there's not much we can do about the comptroller.
right. There's nothing much we can do about it. Okay, so with the commissioners that are left in the courtroom, Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Modis, do you guys have anything further? We're obviously planning on meeting again.
Commissioner,
Tyner?
just for your information, Commissioner Matas texted me 6 minutes ago that he's on.
Okay, good.
For purposes of quorum, he said he was having trouble with Zoom. Maybe
That's fine.
he's having trouble unmuting.
Okay. All right. So do you have any comments, Commissioner Gonzalez, on this budget as you see it so far? Any concerns? Any issues with I mean, we don't have a number yet to work with. That's our problem.
Yeah, I need to go through it one more time.
I'm
I
sorry?
need to go through one more time.
Right, okay, so we're just gonna gather again.
Go through it real quick and.
So for purposes, more than one commissioner spoke to me about, the rigorous meeting schedule for workshop. Dale mentioned earlier, there may not be a need for workshop on the 9th or 10th. But I do have on the Commissioners Court on Wednesday to discuss our schedule going forward. Hopefully Dale gets some good luck going forward. Dale, what's your opinion, or what's the court's opinion about needing to meet tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we do a real brief meeting to go over some items that, if the commissioners have the time to read through I know I give it to them on Friday, and some of them may have got today to go through this in depth, and may have some questions tomorrow. I believe it'll be a quick meeting. As Teresa said, we may need the 9th. If we don't have the numbers on the 4th, I might need to have the 9th to go over the numbers to show you where they're at, so we can, if on the 11th we need to submit them and propose a rate the same day, we'd be prepared. But right now, I'm hoping that we have the numbers by the 4th. Hopefully I have them by the end of the day so I can discuss them tomorrow. Hopefully I have some information for you tomorrow. I'm not promising anything, but we hope it's there. But if not, then we'll need the 9th to talk about nothing but the rates.
So if you don't have the information that you want, you're not gonna meet tomorrow?
What was the question, Commissioner?
If you don't have the information that you need, to discuss it tomorrow, we don't need to meet tomorrow, we meet Monday? Is that what you're saying? I don't know.
Well, you know, tomorrow's a scheduled meeting. If I don't foresee, if I get some information readily, I'll make sure Tyner and the judge knows that we're ready to discuss something. But if not, tomorrow is more likely to be a more question and answer type of a meeting than going through presentation type of meeting. So I could be glad to answer any questions that you might have after you have a chance to review through this. I'll add the additional emergency management position up into the new positions on currently funded out of emergency management that the judge is requesting, and then I'll make some modifications you might have saw. I'll go through the budget challenges, and I'll put some stars by something that says possible funding of the ARP funds. I'll still leave it there so people know that there's still a challenge, and we're still working on maybe the ARP funds to fund this. And I'll provide you those, and we can talk about that tomorrow. But other than that, I presented you the majority of the budget items, the majority of the items that I believe are in need of major discussion. As I mentioned, the courthouse security need to be discussed slightly, but we can do that some other day if not tomorrow. But you know, if you don't have any questions that need to be answered, and I don't have the rates to discuss anything, do we need to meet tomorrow? Probably not.
And the only thing I think is, you know, it all comes down to, if you take the challenges that Teresa says has an asterisk or a possible asterisk of, we got to do it, and you're at 2.6, 2.7, you really need to have a discussion as to what those limited classes and new positions are going to be. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, because everything else is a must. And we only have so much money. So I'm really hoping that we get a feel for what the potential amount of money that we have to work with is, because that might, I mean, this is going to be a terrible thing to have to contemplate, but there may be very limited money for new positions or reclassifications. No matter how much you want to do, you're not going to be able to do it. And it has nothing to do with, you're capped. It has everything to do with the revenue cap. So that piece of it is going to be a real challenge for this court.
Why I said $1 million, if you really think about our tax rate for the general funds, right about 2.6 or 0.26 per $100. So $1 billion will bring 2.6 million. $500 million will bring 1.3, and we're at 400 million. So that's less than 1.3. So it's close to $1 million.
Mm-hmm. And again, I'm just hoping that somehow they're wrong on that.
Well, like I said, we talked to the appraisal district several times, and they said there were some numbers that they had wrong, and they're sending us some new values. Hopefully that goes up. I don't know if it will. As we all know, the lumber prices were sky high, and everything trying to find workers was hard. And if just so y'all know, this was evaluated on January 1st.
Right, it was the worst time.
Yes. So that's why, you know, right now, this next year, we shouldn't have a problem, because I've seen a lot of new construction currently going on now. So everybody's starting to pick back up and stuff. So next year will probably be better than this year, but we only have what we have.
And I don't know, while I was out, if you all had any discussion about, you know, potential, instead of doing it this way, where you have limited reclasses and limited new positions, but to understand and get a feel for what it would take to take the two sections of 28 and above, which are your professionals, and 11 to 28, or yes, it's 27, I guess. That's right, it's 28, and then 29 and above. If you were to try, because we actually ran those numbers, if you try to give what I would consider modest, but at least a across-the-board salary increase that was proportional, you would need $2 million. So it isn't that we have not looked at that, it costs $2 million, which is why I say, what is it on the asterisks that could be cut out? The answer is nothing except for that which we just mentioned. So you need to find revenue sources of $2 million. And one of the things that we're going to do is try to come up with a little optimism paper which shows future revenue cash flow. For example, where could you potentially get $2 million in our future? The other concern I have as a budget challenge is that we've always, I guess we addressed it this year, but when Coastal Parks isn't making X amount of dollars every year. That's really a challenge because you typically rely on that $500,000 to come in and help you with that particular, it's not their fault, but you rely on that revenue, and that revenue is not available.
True, we did lose the Ball Pier revenue coming up. That was anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000. And we lost a little bit of the $12,000 per month for around $120,000 from the restaurant that was on the pier. We lost that. However, we now have got the IB McGee and the Pottery Barley RV parks running at full speed.
So it's
So they
picking it up.
basically zeroed out that part. So if we get the pier rebuilt, then it'll be extra money.
So that's what's good. So if you think about it that way, then your cash flow for your future could be plus $500,000 there. And then we're also going to be looking at our abatements we have some abatements that are kind of coming towards their end of life. And we could potentially pick up in 2023, another, $800,000. I mean, there's some.
800 million.
I'm sorry?
Another
About
800,000,
$1
yes.
million?
Well,
I'll take the million.
Well, we have to think about what was abated, so if some of these larger companies, if we abate a couple $100 million, so if you bring in another couple $100 million, you're bringing in $500,000.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that while things may be not looking so good 2021, 2022, within a very short period of time, we have potentials to bring in that kind of revenue that would sustain, because you remember when you pay salaries, it's not just 1 year. You've got to find that sustainability. And so I just want you to know that people always, say, why don't you give raises across the board? Well, this is why, because every year your budget challenges are so, and that's why when you lose 10 cents, remember that declining curve, you had growth doing this, you had tax rate doing this, and everything in here represents money lost. And so we do very well, I think, in this county, keeping our tax rate, at least we have the last 2 years, as low as it can be while still managing these challenges. But there's no way to invent money. We're not like the feds. We don't print it. So,
That's true. And that's, as I mentioned to them on O2, we showed you the valuation increase for the general fund of 3.8%. So given that, we almost guarantee that our current rate's gonna go down.
right, so if your current rate goes down, like I said, I mean, if you had to guess, Dell, and just, let's put it at the current 600 million new property. I mean, what do you think that we're overall looking at for potential dollars to address some of these challenges?
Well, it depends on where our total valuations goes and where we think our levy is, because our adjusted levy is where we need to do our calculation on
Right.
our new revenue tax. So depending on where that levy is to pay last year, so if the expenses maintain the same as what we are now, which we know they won't, because we know once these courts start running again,
They'll go
it's gonna
up.
get very expensive. So, it's gonna be very difficult to maintain no new revenue tax. I know a lot of us want to try to do that, and that's always the first item we always look at. But with all the budget challenges we have, of right at $2.5 million or almost $3 million, and we're only going to bring in new property money of right at $1 million, we don't really have a choice to be able to fund some of this stuff. And we can try to do reduction. We can try to do this. But, the only thing is trying to raise money is revenue, and unfortunately, the way the county has functioned, most of our revenue for fines and fees and that are already at the maximum rates anyway.
Yeah,
And the only way that they go up is if our crime goes up, and we get more people going to jail and paying
And
more
that's
fees.
not good.
And that's not good. So, it's.
right.
So unfortunately, the only way the county makes money is taxes, and unfortunately, as the pandemic has been going on, we've lost $1 million in interest.
Right, I mean, exactly. I guess what I'm saying to you is that as much as we're focusing on salaries, it's gonna be a very heavy lift to do what we wanted to do, because there are factors that are out of our control here. I think next year is a whole new year. I think, like you said, construction, valuations, but we will wait till we get the final numbers. There's really no sense in, I just ask you to guess so that I can process it in my mind, but it seems like we have as many challenges as we have revenue.
Like I said, I believe our rate's gonna be going down because of 3.87, and our maximum, rate is 3.5% above the no new down. But unfortunately, the way it looks with the known challenges we have without any possible way of reducing some of those, and some we can't, I propose going almost to the maximum level, unfortunately. Hate to
But
say it
it'll
that way,
still be a
but
lower
it'll
rate.
Still be a low rate, but unfortunately, until I get the numbers in and see where the numbers are and where the cash is, I'm just making a rough guess, but my guess would be we might be proposing a pretty high rate. Not above where we're at, but
Right, lower than last year, but higher in
higher
the,
than the no
than
revenue,
the,
yes,
than the no new revenue.
yes.
Okay, so I guess we'll just see everybody, I mean, does anybody have anything else? It doesn't seem like anyone's really, today was, I guess, a good listening day and a learning day. And maybe tomorrow when we gather again, there'll be more specific questions about the limited new positions, which is where I'd like to start with, and the limited reclass. That's where it's all about. The interesting thing, Dale, is how many can we do without breaking the bank? That's what you've proposed here. So that's where we need to look at tomorrow.
Well, like I said, right now, we're showing about a $2 million increase in our reserves from last year to this year, if my estimates hold out to be correct, and right now, they appear to be very close to what I believe, and we're going from 25 to 27, but we all know that our health insurance is in dire
Peril.
stress. So if we can't find either the lost revenue funds or some kind of ARP funds can help us with that, then I might have to use that reserve to fund health insurance. So we'll be back
Right.
at the 25. We won't lose any money, but we won't get any money.
Right. Okay, all right, well, we're gonna be working, to try to, get those qualified, as they say.
And hopefully by the end of the day or before tomorrow morning, we'll have something more on the rates. I'm gonna be nothing but working on those rates from when I go back over the office. I'm gonna find out where we are, how we're doing, who do I need to call, who do I need to yell at, and.
Keep working.
And we'll keep
Yeah,
on, we'll keep
keep
doing
on
it.
them, keep on them. I know they're probably as frustrated as you are.
Yeah.
Because they're waiting for the state and,
So all the stuff is waiting for the comptroller.
yeah. And I guess the commission understands that. I mean, it's not us. For the public listening, we are waiting. Okay, well then if, with that, it's a,
But unfortunately, the comptroller has some rules, but then the law has some rules about when we have to publish notices, publish this, so we don't have a lot of room, so worst comes to worst, we might have to use what we have and hopefully it be incorrect, instead of knowing to be incorrect.
right. Okay, Tyner, anything else before we gavel out?
That's all I got. It looks like we're meeting tomorrow. That seems to be the will of the court and Dale.
Hopefully, we'll have some tax information to do, and we'll follow up some questions. I'll try to go through the budget challenges list, and I'll make some notifications of which ones we're proposing ARP funds for, and add the additional one for the emergency management position on the new position list.
And this is kind of interesting, but I know it's super low interest rates, but maybe do a calculation on the ARP fund interest only, so that, if it's 50,000, we can at least say to ourselves, look, you're pulling ARP, but you're not really pulling ARP, because we can use that 50,000, does that make sense? We can put the interest,
Well, our interest losses were at least $500,000.
I know, you never catch up.
Never catch up.
You never catch up. Okay, all right, well, that's it. I left my gavel in the other room, but the time for the, well, I don't know if we're not really clerking this in, but it's still nice for people knowing it's 11:34, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.